Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Legion Beta. We are continuing with our melee complete previews as we get closer and closer to our full-on melee comparison in Legion, so everyone has a good basis of information. Before we get started, can we say hello to the very serious feral community that is out there? They always get a little touchy when I post a video because they get sensitive. That's okay. That's all right. Hello. There's some very niche communities in WoW. Feral's one of them, Enhancement Shape's another. Typically the guys that existed in Vanilla and had a hard time playing the spec they wanted to play. I have a lot of love for those guys. No issues from me. Let's get into it then. A lot of people re-rolling away from Feral. In fact, not a great deal of information out there about the Feral, is there? A lot of people looking to me personally to get my information out there and let them know what's going on. As I did say, as have many others, is I enjoyed Feral more in Legion than I did in Walls of Draenor. I spent this morning, spent about 4 or 5 hours on a 110. We were very courteously given to me to test some things out and come back to mine. Just done a couple of dungeons, just trying out some talents while we were still lowish level of 103. Just to make sure I was conclusive in my ideas. So, why are people re-rolling away from it? Does that instantly mean that it's bad? No, absolutely not. Similar to the Survival Hunter, it's not bad. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. The problem is, Legion has such a huge variety of melee classes, more so than we've ever had in the past, that it's very difficult to get people not to try out other specs. And these old school specs, or perhaps, dare I say, antiquated type specs that haven't developed as much, are starting to lose their charm a little bit in comparison to some of the others that have more of a flamboyant, more of interesting, more fun, dare I say it again. I'm trying not to off-put people here. There's still a lot of fun to be found with Feral. But there's needless to say, when you're testing your class out and see Demon Hunters doing fucking eye beams, you see Warriors doing crazy kinds of things, you see DKs with giant magical scythes and dragons coming out of the sky, it does make you go, what do we have? What do we have? And is this going to be a spec I can play long term while all my friends are doing all these wonderful, cool things? So, with that said, what do we have with the Feral in Legion then? We still have pretty much everything we've had since Vanilla. I mean, this is how long it's been going on. I was a main Feral Druid throughout a huge part of Wrath of the Lich King. Well, a main Druid is what I would say, following my choosing a class video. I did play every single spec, I should say there. But majority of it was spent playing Feral. So we have Shred, we still have Rake, we still have Rip, Skull Bash is still here, we still have Ferocious Bite, Maim, Survival Instincts, Berserk, Tiger's Fury to bump up our energy, Swipe and Thrash, and all these usual things. Nothing here is surprising to say the least, except for our new artifact ability, Ashamane's Frenzy, which is Unleash the Ashamane's Frenzy, clawing your target 15 times over 3 seconds for 40,000 physical damage, and then doing some bleed after it, and gives 3 combo points, okay? So, one of the big changes that made me a little bit more interested in Feral in Legion is that it's no longer slow. You can spec to be slow. You can absolutely do that, but it is a choice. In fact, I think it's important here to point out that the entire Legion talent system was actually led. The charge was led. The forerunner in that system design was the Feral Druid for Walls of Draenor. You might recall during WoD when I did my Feral look, is I praised the Feral Druid for giving the option for people to have easier talents to deal with that's led to slightly less damage, but maybe not if you were going to struggle with the extra ones. But they did provide the choice of taking extra talents that should give you a slightly higher DPS, but not to the point where you were crushing the enemy, right? Or crushing your competitors, I should say. So the entire Legion system was actually kind of founded by the Feral Druid in Walls of Draenor, which I think is something of pride for Feral Druids. Usually it's the Warlocks who do that, but it was the Ferals this time around. So, our usual stuff will remain. We're going to obviously get into Prowl, so we get some nice DPS bonuses for our couple of openers. We're going to get our Rake on. We're going to build up our combo points. We're going to put our Rip on, and then we're just going to kind of chill out and maybe fit in some Ferocious Bites or refresh our Rip or do whatever we want to do. And that's going to be it. You will be happy to know that things like Tiger's Fury still snapshot. Very important to a lot of guys who like to get the nuances of Feral Druid working well, to know that things still do snapshot for the Feral Druid, as it's been taken away for so many others. So all good things there. So not much to teach you about if you've ever played a Feral Druid before. So let's get to the talent system then. A decent talent system to say the least, except for a couple of real blunders by Blizzard, I would say. So we have Predator, great for leveling. What does it do? The cooldown of Tiger's Fury resets when a target dies with one of your active bleed effects, okay? So as long as you've got any form of bleed on at all, your Tiger's Fury will reset. This is wonderful for both leveling and for AoE. I'm sure you've already picked up on that. If you have a bleed on even from a Thrash or a Rake or whatever, your Tiger's Fury is going to keep resetting, keep throwing your energy up there to keep doing tons and tons of AoE, and that will please remember that, because that will be important later. Blood Scent, obviously we gain extra combo points for our critical strike, so the melee abilities in cat form have a 10% increased critical strike chance on targets with a bleed effect. Please don't worry about the talents I've chosen here. I play around with all of them as much as possible. It's not like this is my favorite setup or anything. Lunar Inspiration, the most lackluster of the bunch. Some people love this. I can't stand it. It just gives you another dot to manage. Is that interesting to me? Not particularly, but if you want to do more stuff, there you go. So you can Moonfire now while you're a cat. People always got about the ranged effect, but really, that's not really the point of it by any means. It's to have this ranged situation going on. This stuff doesn't really matter. Wild Charge, Displacement, Renewal. The affinities, I've mentioned in pretty much every Druid video how much I've gone off the idea of the affinities. Initially, I was really into it, but ultimately what I found is it just makes the Druid feel less cool with having access to so many different options. Basically, you're picking up passives for the most part, which is either you increase the range of your abilities, 10% reduced damage, or you Sarah's Gift with a passive heal. Some CC, Mighty Bash, Master Tanglement, Typhoon, nothing we haven't seen before. Let's get to the cool stuff. So you'll notice there's like 3 rows of talents there, which are really sort of like, ugh, not that fun for a PvE perspective whatsoever. I'm not talking about PvP in any of my videos, so you should bear that in mind. So level 75, we start getting into it then. So Soul of the Forest, pretty self-explanatory. I just kind of went recently with like the full passive build to see what it was like. This is like the slowest build, I would guess to say. I just needed to see what it felt like, honestly. I would never really play this. Soul of the Forest, so your finishing moves grant 6 energy with a combo point. Okay. Incarnation gives you the stronger. I didn't even notice in the artifact quest that this actually replaces Berserk. But it does. So it replaces Berserk, gives you Incarnation, so you get more benefit from your Shred and Rake while you're doing more damage. Just gives you a longer period of doing big dick DPS. Very cool. Savage Raw. So this is the first blunder. Savage Raw still exists. Why do I call that a blunder? And I know some people love Savage Raw. I fucking hate it. Especially now we haven't got the glyph or anything. It makes the Feral Druid a real ramp-up class. Not only that, Savage Raw is just clearly, in my opinion, superior to the others in most situations. Not all, but most. So a finishing move that grants 30% increased damage to your cat form attacks for their full duration, okay? It's just a huge buff. It lasts longer per combo point. So some people are going to say, we've had Savage Raw forever, Preacher. It's not that big of a deal. I get it, and some of it's subjective, but honestly, the ramp-up time with Feral Druid with Savage Raw, it just kind of fucking spoils it for me and makes it... Maintaining it while you're doing other things is just a pain in the ass, and frankly, even Blizzard sort of agrees, right? We know 2 expansions ago they made the posters that we're doing away with these kind of talents, but I'm not going to labour the point. Just bear in mind, Savage Raw is there. It's a thing. We no longer have the glyph, so it's back to its real old-school sort of maintenance buff style, okay? It's very classic Savage Raw in comparison to what you know of in WoD. So if you're used to having the free Savage Raw in Walls of Draenor, just bear in mind that's not a thing. So, Sabertooth, okay, if you really want to just make no mistakes with a Feral Druid ever, you can take Sabertooth, alright? Which is Ferocious Bite, always refreshes the duration of Rip. This means if you're doing single target, you will never Rip again after the first one, alright, pretty much. You'll just be Ferocious Biting it and refreshing it and snapshotting it and doing all that kind of things that way, okay? You'll just do Ferocious Bite instead. And just basically managing your energy to get the most. Obviously, the 50-point Ferocious Bite is the ideal, and just sort of managing that. Jagged Wounds is quite cool. I enjoy playing around with this. It just makes your bleeds tick faster. It makes it a little bit more of a furious spec. A bit more like a cat. Class fantasy-wise is important. Legion's all about class fantasy. Do I feel like a cat? No. It's so methodical and meticulous that of all the class fantasies they've got in Legion, the cat is still the one that just seems so far away from what I think of when I think of a feral cat. It's very plodding in its approach. It's very precise in most ways. That doesn't feel like a cat to me in many ways. Although it does feel better in Legion, it's not quite hit the mark for me yet. So your bleeds tick much faster. It's very cool. Alun's Guidance then. So you kind of need this if you're going Savage Roar. Again, I was talking about that ramp up. So Lose Gans grants you 5 combo points and an additional 1 combo point every 1 second for 5 seconds. You kind of need that to go hand in hand with Savage Roar to make this really work out for those big openers or big burst that you want to do, to make sure you're not like in a burst window and you've got a Savage Roar and you make those kind of mistakes, which happens to us all at some point if you set it up slightly incorrectly, or the timings of the fight don't work out correctly or something along those lines. There's like a million reasons. But Lose Gans kind of goes with a simple, basic, uninteresting synergy with Savage Roar, to say the least. Other than that, combo point generation ain't a big deal for Feral Druids. It's not, and this is why I think people got over the top about the Legendary with the extra energy. Realistically speaking, it's not a big deal. These aren't real limiting factors for the most part, because once your energy's dumped, even if your energy bar was all the way up here, once it's dumped, it's still regenerating at the same rate. Okay. Let's get some more interesting things then. Brutal Slash. So, the Survival Hunter that we did yesterday actually has something extremely similar to this. So, it replaces Swipe. So, Swipe's going to set you back 45 energy, okay, and gives a combo point. Yeah, swiping your target, standard stuff. So, Brutal Slash replaces Swipe. So, you no longer have Swipe. It only costs 20 energy, and it does a lot more damage. Okay, and awards 1 combo point. Now, the difference is, because that might just seem flat out amazing, is it has a charge system. Okay, it has a charge system similar to the Survival Hunter ability. It's a 15-second recharge, okay? It's huge. This means it's pretty fucking garbage, honestly, in comparison to Swipe. Unless the fight is like... I was trying to find scenarios where I'd use Brutal Slash, and you kind of want to back-to-back them to get the most out of this, and it's like, if the fight allows the perfect lineup of bursting down like an AoE pack and then waiting all that time for it to fully recharge, then it's kind of okay. Well, that's so rare. The realistic thing is, if you're doing dungeons or outdoor content, is you just need it more than like 45 seconds if you're AoEing. And AoE is something we're going to talk about at the end of the video, because it's a real fucking problem for Druids. So Brutal Slash kind of looks good on the tooltip, but in practice, I've played with it quite a lot. It blows. It really blows how limited you are in AoE, because once you're out of that, you don't have much left. Once your thrash is ticking and all that, you're just kind of like, 15 seconds is a long fucking time. And what you tend to find is things are dead. Blood Talents. So Blood Talents is everything people know of before. So casting a Healing Touch, which you obviously get for free once you use a finisher, pretty much. Cause your next 2 melee abilities to deal 30% increased damage. Again, that snapshotting effect, people know all about Blood Talents. It still remains very cool. And of course, Moment of Clarity. Moment of Clarity now affects your next 3 cat form abilities. Now, you might feel like I'm skimming over these talents. The point is, a lot of these talents are exactly something we've had before, right? So there's no reason for me to go into detail with all these things in depth. If you're new to Feral Druid, then maybe you're thinking, can you go in a bit more depth? But honestly, most guys watching this have probably played a Feral Druid at some point before and don't need this stuff explaining to them. So, Moment of Clarity, something we've seen for years now, which is your next 3 cat form abilities will be free. Obviously, using them correctly is always a good advice to make sure you're getting the most benefit from your energy. Can't always do that, but for the most part, you can. Your maximum energy is increased by 30 as well. So you get lots and lots of energy with your Feral Druid. And this is the system Blizzard's come up with to try and take out that real slowness. That real slowness that occurs with the Feral Druid that people, particularly like me, didn't like. So they've tried to counter that, and they have succeeded in that. They have got it a little bit faster, so it's less downtime than what we've seen in Warlords of Draenor or in early gear. I'm not talking about people who got ridiculously overpowered everything end of the game gear, right? We're talking about a more realistic scenario. So, what are the problems with it, and why might people not want to play this? Single target, it's fine. Is it going to be viable? Sure. Where are you going to run into problems? A lot of stuff in Legion revolves around group play, and AoE in particular is a real fucking problem for Feral Druid. It's a real fucking problem. And because you're always trying to... You obviously have the self-combo points, which we've had for a while now, which is nice. But once you start actually AoEing, you'll just notice that you have to do so much setup to get it going that it really fucking takes the wind out of the sails once you're doing things. Because you're going to be trying to throw in things like swipes and thrashes and all that kind of stuff. And then you get left, particularly if you take Brutal Slash, with these downtime windows where you can't do anything. And it takes so long to set up. And the realism is, if you're going to start spreading bleeds, you're going to run around, you're limited by energy at that point, and you're trying to make that work. And if you're not in a scenario where it's constant and you could take advantage of Predator, yeah, I was talking about Predator earlier. If you can't take advantage of Predator regularly, by the time you set everything up, everything's dead, right? If you look at how long the Thrash Bleed lasts, it's fucking forever. It's like 15 seconds to get the maximum damage out of there. There's barely anything in dungeons or mythic dungeons that last the amount of time that Thrash needs to do its full damage. Yeah? And your bleed's the same. You throw a rip on there, your rip's gonna last fucking like 20 odd seconds. It's too long. And you can counter that a little bit with jagged wounds, right? To make it do 33% less time. But even then, it takes so long to get everything set up, running and working, and limiting your energy and snapshotting it that you're going to work your balls off. And then you're going to find that some fucking dickhead like this guy right here, like Great Bobo, has charged in, wrecked, blade-stormed everything, and it's dead. And you're working your ass off and multi-mob managing to try and get everything done, that your damage is, like, suffering because you can't get the full benefits out of all the abilities you're doing. You're pressing buttons that aren't getting the benefits out of there. And it happens constantly. It happens constantly where you're running around setting things up. You're even chasing mobs to spread your bleed, to do all this kind of stuff. And you're just not seeing great results out of it because everything's dead because a fucking Demon Hunter eye-beamed the fuck out of it. Or there was some Mega Barrage combo that went on from a Hunter. And a million other things where players have more consistent on-demand bursts to go along with it. Is there anything they could do to solve it? Well, Celestalon has gone on record to say mechanically they think the Feral Druid is fine and tuning's going to come out of that. So what I want to point out here and reiterate, as most of you should know but some of you won't, is that when I do these videos, I'm not talking about the actual damage that people do. Blizzard could easily boost fucking swipe or whatever to do lol amounts of damage. They can do that overnight and it makes no difference. Gameplay wise, what I'm telling you is a lot of things just become overlapping and don't pay off in regards particular to AoE, where you're doing loads and loads of things and other classes are doing different things better and more fun at the same time. And you're kind of going, this doesn't really pay off. A nice solution would have been some really decent AoE finisher. I'm not talking about Crimson Tempest, but throwing Rip out or something like that. So let's say you've thrown out some rakes and you're getting some swipes going. The best you can really do is throw out a Rip. You're never going to see the full damage of that Rip in nearly all scenarios. Right? Similar with Thrash, you're never really going to see the benefit of that. Even if you take Jagged Wounds, and I've been playing mostly with Jagged Wounds to try and counteract this effect. Generally speaking, you pull like 2 or 3 mobs, you're really suffering with getting that damage going. Particularly as so much of your damage comes from auto attacks being so fast and so consistent all the time. If you just like bleed up 2 mobs, so I could bleed up 2 mobs, right? And then get everything going on them. What you'll notice if you do this with like 2 mobs and you're attacking one of them, this one's going to die so much quicker. Like, so much quicker because that huge majority of your damage coming from white damage. And especially if you've got 3 targets, you're just running around all the time trying to make things work out for you. What I'm trying to say after that entire splooge of information is that Feral Druids would at the moment be one of the last on my list for doing things like Mythic Dungeon content. That kind of thing, which is going to be a huge part of Legion. Doing multi-mob leveling and having fun with it. The Feral Druids aren't great with it. Leveling it has not been fun at all. I mean, I've only done about, what, a level and a half as Feral. Didn't enjoy it at all. And then I did some Suramar at level 110 just to be out in the world. Wasn't fun compared to my other specs. And that's where the real design flaws come into play, is once you get up there and you start doing things, you start looking around the room, right? And you're starting to see everybody else do things differently and having way more fun with it. I talk often about Moments of Glory as being an important part of the Feral Druid, and the animations of the Feral Druid are absolutely fantastic, as are the skins and the huge variety of skins that the Feral Druid actually gets that look amazing. And that's something to bear in mind. Like Ashamane's Fury and all the swipes and the purple shreds that are going on looks really cool. And it looks nasty, and I like it. The leap with the ferocious bite. All this looks amazing. Love it. Love the animation. Love the fluidity of it. It's not enough to take away from the gameplay elements that just don't work out. And other classes are just doing it in different ways. So I don't want to leave you with a sour taste in your mouth, but those are kind of factual problems that I found with like 12 plus hours of gameplay, is that I've run into that consistently, that I'm not running into with other specs, and that hopefully will give you some kind of idea as to why people are re-rolling away from it. Just to give you an idea of the artifact abilities you'll pick up along the way then, we have Shadow Thrash. Thrash has a 25% chance to release part of Ashamane's Soul, causing all nearby enemies to take more damage. Again, it's not a gameplay change, it'll happen or it won't. Open Wounds, the Fangs of Ashmane tear deep into your target, causing your attacks to ignore 50% attacks armor while Rip is active. Again, you won't even notice the difference. And look how lucky I was here. Be jelly, I got the two Rip artifacts, that was cool. And Ashmane's Bite, your combo point generators against targets bleeding from your Rip have a 3% chance to awaken the spirit of Ashmane, which inflicts a shadowy duplicate of that Rip on the target. Not cool. There could have been a lot of ways they went about this. Particularly something like a swiping thrash, or for a while rogues had the ability for bleeds to start spreading through infection and all this kind of stuff. Would have loved to have seen that to kind of give more reasoning to use certain abilities here. But what I tend to find is that I'm doing a lot of effort and a lot of work. It looks kind of cool, but it's not amazing. And other specs are doing different things better. So, again, that's where the Feral Druid is for me. It's certainly more fun for me than it was in WoD. But I'm certainly, at the same time, having more fun with other melee specs in Legion. Alright, guys? Thank you so much for watching our little Feral Druid complete preview. This is what you can expect to happen. As always, this is beta. There will be slight tuning changes and perhaps even something spectacular. If there is, I'll let you know. Alright, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.